अस्सलाम वालेकुम। माय नेम इज़ डॉक्टर सुंदस अली। हम यहाँ पर आज आए हैं वाशिंगटन डीसी में। यहाँ पे कॉन्ग्रेशनल ब्रीफिंग हो रही है पाकिस्तान पे, जो वहाँ पे अभी ह्यूमन राइट्स अब्यूसेस हो रहे हैं, जो इस्लामाबाद मैसेकर हुआ है, जो वहाँ पे सिविलियंस का ट्रायल हो रहा है मिलिट्री कोर्ट्स में। तो ये बहुत ही एक ज़बरदस्त इनिशिएटिव है।
Where is he? Right here. Stand up, sir. Step out of the room. And the guy is sitting in front of him. Sir, stand up and step out of the room.
I just told you my name. Okay? Don't use the word. Be nice, I be nice. Okay? Don't use wrong word. Don't try to threat me. You don't know me. I don't want to know you.
Sir, stand up and step out of the room.
This is not their first time.
I apologize, guys.
In shared values of democracy and human rights. This must include countering the pernicious activities of the People's Republic of China, a country who feigns being a reliable partner yet is anything but that.
I would like to welcome you all today to this congressional briefing, which is held by and hosted by Congressman Casar. I would like to express my deepest and sincerest gratitude for you being the holder of democracy, supporting democracy, human rights across the globe, including Pakistan. Congressman Casar has spearheaded several vital congressional letters, including the letter to President Biden and Secretary of State, and he has been a huge supporter of Pakistani diaspora and their efforts towards restoring democracy in Pakistan. Today, we will be discussing the Islamabad massacre, and we hope to achieve and enlighten people about what is happening in Pakistan, the ongoing crisis, the military destabilizing the country, and dismantling of the institutions. We would also hope to address potential sanctions against the individuals who were responsible for Islamabad massacre. Thank you very much, Congressman Casar. Everybody, please give a huge welcome to him.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, and I'm so grateful to those of you who have traveled from far and wide to be able to be here today to talk about the events and the killing on November 26th and 27th, to talk about issues of peace and democracy both in Pakistan and across the world. And I think it's so important for the Pakistani American community to be gathered and organizing to promote peace and human rights, as you said, for everyone. I'm Casar. I'm proud to represent the heart of Texas, stretching from San Antonio to Austin, Texas. And while I really feel wanted to came into office focusing on issues of domestic policy, it's so clear that the way that the United States treats our partners and neighbors across the world impacts our everyday lives here in the United States. And I came in with some level of expertise on issues in Latin America, actually, where my family is from. And the United States has a history, an unfortunate history, and a short-sighted history of oftentimes thinking in its short-sighted military interests, thinking of military alliances first and democracy in places like Latin America second.
For context, it's important to emphasize that I have worked with top media networks, including the state broadcaster as television anchor, political analyst and editor since 2005. I have written extensively on Pakistani politics, and have been founder editor of print and online publications. Before media, I worked for more than 10 years with Federal Government of Pakistan. These roles have provided me meaningful access to the top civil military, decision makers, politicians, legislators, and judiciary of Pakistan. Honorable Congressman, while Pakistan has been defined as a state moving from crisis to crisis since its inception, the Islamabad massacre of November 2024, in which hundreds of people were shot, literally at the gates of its Parliament and Supreme Court, and bodies made to disappear, like the Banana Massacre in Colombia of 1928, was unprecedented even in Pakistan's troubled history. This represents a clear and present danger for US interests in South and Central Asia, and the growing instability, Congressman, is increasing immigration pressures towards Europe via Mediterranean. Asylum applications are also piling up in the US borders from Pakistan. Honorable Congressman and fellow gentlemen, but we have not reached this dangerous situation overnight. Pakistan, a nation of almost 250 million, fifth largest in the world after China, India, China, United States, and Indonesia, second largest Muslim nation, and the only Muslim country with nuclear weapons, with almost 1 million trained men in uniform in arms, is increasingly on boil since a military-led regime change operation in April 2022 against the government of Prime Minister Imran Khan. Since then, country with more than 65% under the age of 35, facing an economic meltdown, water, food, and energy shortages, is being run by a military with growing brutality and in total disregard of United Nations and international human rights conventions. Since April 2022, while ports have been made to collapse, more than 20,000 men and women have been arrested, hundreds have been tortured, journalists, lawyers, human rights activists, and poets have been abducted, forced to go underground or seek protection in Western democracies like myself. I left when a dear colleague, an outspoken critic of military, Arshad Sharif, was chased and murdered in Kenya on 23rd October 2022. 10 days later, an assassin almost murdered Imran Khan, the former Prime Minister and country's most popular leader. But both criminal acts, Congressman, to this day have not been properly investigated. Biden administration, for reasons not understood, completely ignored the crisis developing in Pakistan. Attention was repeatedly drawn by Pakistani American community to brutal suppression of opposition, gross human rights violation, silencing of media, muzzling of courts, and internet shutdowns. But Biden administration kept on dodging the questions and thus tacitly encouraged the Pakistani military to continue with its reign of terror. Congressman, in November 2023, I remind you, Representatives Greg Casar and Ilhan wrote to Secretary Blinken to review if United States security assistance is contributing to human rights violations. And on 28 February 2024, after elections were massively rigged in Pakistan by the military, 31 congressmen led by Representatives Greg Casar and Susan Biles wrote to Secretary Blinken to withhold recognition of an apparently illegitimate government till a transparent and credible investigation is conducted into alleged election interference and irregularities. In June 2024, in an unprecedented move, United States Congress and House Resolution 901 affirmed its support for democracy and demanded investigation into election irregularities and interference by the military. And in October 2024, 4 weeks before the Islamabad massacre, Representatives Greg Casar, Jim McGovern, yourself, and Congresswoman Tlaib again led 61 congressmen asking Biden administration to emphasize human rights and rule of law in its policy towards Pakistan, and demanded the release of all political prisoners, including the former Prime Minister Imran Khan. Congressmen, all unfortunately fell on deaf ears. Washington ignored the growing crisis, including increasing reports of mass national repression, filing up the Federal Bureau of Investigation. These are hundreds of instances of intimidation and violence against relatives, families, and associates of Pakistani Americans in Pakistan by the military regime for the views expressed within the US for reaching out to the congressmen and for the comments on Twitter, which is, by the way, blocked in Pakistan since 17 February 2024. Congressman, Islamabad massacre was thus the culmination of growing public outrage and helplessness against rigged elections, destruction of the court system, and silence of the international community led by Washington. It was in these circumstances when more than 100,000 protesters marched into capital Islamabad to demand release of political prisoners, restoration of the Supreme Court, and respect for the stolen mandate in February election. Instead of negotiating with peaceful, unarmed protesters, a military operation was conducted in the middle of the night. No one knows how many were really killed, as dead bodies were made to disappear, just like the Banana Massacre of 1928 in Colombia. I hope Ryan Grimm of Dropsite, who I see here, who did an investigative story, will provide more details about this massacre. Congressman, in my humble opinion, unless the US Congress impresses upon the incoming Trump administration to develop a focus on Pakistan through special envoys and demand person-specific sanctions against the officers of the military regime and police responsible for the massacre, human rights violations, instability and chaos will continue to grow in Pakistan, increasing risk for its neighbors and the United States' interest in the region. Thank you.
By shooting them with live ammunition, by tear gassing them, beating them, arresting them, and lying about it. Again, I've also seen that right here in our backyard with protesters and the current president sending out, National Guard and military folks to go out there to again suppress that kind of movement to be able to have a voice and speak up. But we know these anti-democratic measures very much are dangerous. We know that it will lead to, the imprisonment of political opponents, as we saw with Imran and so many others. I've heard of journalists, activists, people that even work at NGOs have been targeted simply for trying to protect the Pakistani people and people that are speaking out. But I want to be very clear, because I am a person that grew up in the most beautiful, blackest city in the country, where they taught me to speak truth to power, even if even if it's unpopular, even if my voice shakes. I just want you to know I'm very, very much disappointed in my own country for continuing to be an ally to this kind of undemocratic process and just their dangerous, again, attacks on folks being able to speak up. We've already spent billions of dollars in weapons and military aid over the years with little regard for basic human rights. And I always tell people it's not always just Palestine that is impacted by unconditional aid or just not using the leverage that we have as a country. We see it all over the world, where my own country continues to feel that kind of human rights abuses. But we stand here together saying free Imran Khan. We stand here together and saying prisoners. We stand together again in saying that the Pakistani people deserve to be able to choose their own leaders in free and fair democratic process. And again, I'll continue to be an ally to speak up.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Congressman, Congresswoman, Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. I've been reporting on conflict and politics in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and India, 3 countries I have lived in, reported from, and still have family and friends in for the last 25 years. Frankly, I'm a fish out of water here in Washington. I really shouldn't be here. I should be back home in Pakistan. And yet, I can't be back home because home no longer feels like home. Strangely, I have easy access to this capital here in Washington than my own capital city of Islamabad, which ironically means the city of Islam, a religion of peace and tolerance. And yet, in that city is where some of my colleagues are buried today. Colleagues like journalist Ashad Sharif, like Salim Shahzad, who were killed in the line of duty for doing what they were supposed to be doing in the business of accountability and truth-telling. They were killed for doing their job. Today's briefing is an attribute to heroes like them, heroes who are no longer with us, but have given us the courage to carry on this work of speaking truth to power. The steady attrition of democratic rights and journalistic freedoms over the last 2 decades has seen thousands killed in my country, including dozens of fellow journalists. The pace has picked up, especially over the last few years, and has led to this difficult moment for me and some of my friends on this panel. I really should be bursting with pride being able to speak at this great forum. I mean, the Congresswoman here is from Michigan, where I went to college, and is a local hero for so many years. But I don't have that pride. I shouldn't, because that pride should come from the distinction of being embedded with and covering over 100 of the bravest of the Pakistan Army's 250 military units deployed on some of the country's most intense front lines, seeing that country's most courageous soldiers sacrifice their lives. Pride, which comes from hailing from 3 generations of public servants and law enforcement officials. My late father led Pakistan's intelligence bureau. My stepfather served as an instructor in Pakistan's army aviation. Pride, which comes from launching the country's first independent and Urdu and English news channels and interviewing dozens of its leaders and influencers. And yet, here I am, a prisoner outside my own country because of the way Pakistan's military and military-backed leaders have treated their best and brightest.
We see generally a pattern of clampdown on protests and freedom of assembly, not just focused on PTI supporters. This is also the case specifically in the case of the Baloch National Gathering, for example, in July, where we saw use of live ammunition, and even this past weekend, a heavy crackdown by police against Baloch protesters in Karachi during what should have been a peaceful and was a peaceful political mobilization campaign.